Hey guys, it's John. I made a video breaking down the Eastern Conference standings for the 22-23 regular season. At number 1, we've got the Milwaukee Bucks. This is the best team in the East in my opinion. If Middleton doesn't go down to that injury against I think it was the Bulls in the playoffs, I bet they take the Warriors to at least 7 games in the finals, maybe take it away from them. Giannis is a beast. He plays hard all regular season long. So I see these guys finishing first and at worst 4th place in the East. I think the Bucks are a little bit better this year than last, even though, like I was saying, if Middleton didn't go down, I think they would have won the championship, or at least been right there with the Warriors. They brought everybody back, and they even added Joe Ingles. Now, yes, he's kind of older, coming off a pretty serious injury there with the ACL, but he's an extra shooter, and they only paid him $6 million, so not bad at all. You've also got to keep in mind progression on this team. Giannis gets better every year. He could have won the MVP last year, and he could win it this year too. Also, continuity, you can't underrate that either. The core now has been together for some time, and that chemistry is building. This is a real revenge season for Giannis, and he's going to be going harder than ever every single night. That said, though, over the last 3 seasons, he's averaged about 16 missed games. So the team's going to have to be able to perform when he's not actually there too. At number 2, I've got the Philadelphia 76ers. They made some nice additions this offseason, and I think just the team will be better next year from a continuity and progression perspective. You've also got MVP Joel Embiid, and they didn't lose their head coach, so that's always nice. I see these guys coming in 2nd place, but they could finish as high as 1st and as low as 4th. This season, you're going to have Harden for the full year. Now, will he be more healthy? We can only hope, but I don't think he's going to be too much better. He's getting a bit later into his career now. But he'll be able to fit in a little bit better as a playmaker too. It's not easy coming in halfway through the season and then assuming that point guard role. And Harden is amazing, but it's not just about how well can Harden adapt. It's about how the whole team can adapt to Harden too. So having a full season under their belt is going to be super crucial this time. They also added Harrell. That's a great offensive spark off the bench. You've got PJ Tucker. He's a winner and an answer on defense for some of those awesome players there in the Eastern Conference. Think Giannis, KD, Siakam, Jimmy, Tatum, Brown. You put them on all those guys and they're a little bit worse. You don't really want anyone else. You wouldn't want anyone else on them, except for maybe Giannis. I mean, he's a total beast. Now, PJ is getting older and they got him for 3 years, I think. So who knows how good that deal is going to be in the 3rd year, but at least this year, I'm really excited to see PJ Tucker on that team. Also picked up Danuel House. That's a 3-and-D plug-and-play wing. I mean, you can't have too many of those, especially in the regular season when someone might go down. Just to keep you afloat, you can always give him some minutes and he'll play solidly. Also, if we look at some guys who are already on their team, Tyrese Maxey, he went off in the playoffs last year. And I think part of that is BS because he went up against Fred with the Raptors, and that guy only had 1 leg, so he was able just to run right by him. But I think he'll be more comfortable this year in the scoring role of the backcourt. Now, the only concerns really here with the 76ers is injury. I mean, you've got Harden and Embiid. Those are your best players, and they're both sort of iffy when it comes to injuries. So I think that makes this a very volatile outcome. At number 3, we've got the Boston Celtics. Now, it sucks you lost your head coach, but on paper, this team's a lot better than it was last year. You've got young guys progressing, some new solid additions, but I only see them having a ceiling of finishing 2nd, a floor of 5th. It's going to be tough for them to actually capture that number 1 spot, in my opinion, just because the start of the season is going to be rough. You've got to adjust to a new coach and the culture change that comes with that. So this offseason, the Celtics brought in Malcolm Brogdon. I think that's a great addition. He's like a slightly better Derek White. He fits in. He can help play, make a little. 6 assists, 2 turnovers last season. That was his average. And the Celtics don't have a traditional point guard, and Brogdon's not quite that either. He's more of a 2. But that's fine, if you got this guy coming in, a little bit more playmaking potential here. 3.0 assist to turnover ratio is quite solid. And he's got that veteran presence too. Now, they did lose their coach, like I mentioned, so that's going to make things a little bit more volatile in the locker room. And you've got to say that this Boston team has been very volatile in their performance too. Go back to all those years ago when they went and played LeBron in the conference finals, and they weren't back for a while. Just look at last season. They get all the way to the finals, sweeping the Nets in the 1st round. But then the year before, they almost got swept by the Nets in the 1st round. So these guys really seem to have some volatility there where they do super awesome or super terribly. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this season goes, and I hope they can figure out how to adjust to this new coach, this new system. Now, in terms of the players actually getting better, there's no doubt that the playoffs really helped their experience a lot. They gained chemistry, experience under pressure. 2 Game 7s going through that Eastern Conference, the semifinals and the finals, that's got to build a lot of character. And a lot of belief in yourself too, between the teammates and in the front office saying hey, Tatum and Brown, we can win a championship with these guys. I mean, it didn't stop them from offering Brown in trades. That poor guy just gets thrown around all the time. But at least they all know what this group is really capable of, which is key. They got a young core too. Brown, Tatum, Time Lord, Grant Williams. These guys are all under 25. That's insane. It sort of reminds you about OKC back in the day. But just like OKC back in the day, you cannot get complacent, man. You got to keep going every single year like this is your last season with the team, because who knows, maybe Brown does get traded at some point and things go terribly. Now, last season, the Celtics, they did get lucky with injuries. Middleton went down in that conference semifinals. If he doesn't go down, and if Grant Williams doesn't turn into Steph Curry in Game 7 against the Bucks, I don't think they win that series. If Jimmy Butler hits that one 3-point shot in the conference semifinals, well, they're not going to the finals. So they're definitely not a shoo-in to go that far once again. The new coaching is not a plus, and the league knows more about them now, and they've got a target on their backs. They won't be sneaking up on anyone. So it's going to be tough for them this season, and it's going to be a real prove-it time for them to show that, hey, this wasn't a fluke, that we did so well. At number 4, I've got the Miami Heat. I got a ceiling on these guys of the 2nd spot and a floor of the 6th. They're super solid, but it's tough to say they actually got better this offseason. Now, I'm sure Pat Riley will pull out some magic, and maybe they'll be a little bit luckier next year. You know, with injuries, Kyle Lowry wasn't that healthy, and going into the playoffs, you know, he missed that whole first series, if I remember correctly. The Heat did lose some key guys this offseason. Like, look at PJ Tucker. That's the best defender you want on any of these Eastern Conference elite teams. Like I was mentioning earlier, Giannis, Tatum, etc., KD. Like, you don't really want anyone else other than PJ guarding those guys unless it's like Giannis. Now, also, Markieff Morris is gone, which is a pretty big loss, but he didn't actually do too much last season. He hasn't played all that much since, Jokic literally assaulted this guy on the court, so that's rough. They did re-sign some people. You've got Dedmon, Cody Martin, or maybe Caleb Martin, can't quite remember, Vic Oladipo. So those guys, it'll be nice to have them back. And they also drafted 27th overall, Nikola Jovic. He's 6'10", 222 pounds from he played in Yugoslavia last year in the ABA. Played 25 games, averaged 28 minutes, 12 points, 36% from 3, and 4.5 rebounds. This guy looks like a pretty highly skilled player, and I think the Heat will be able to mold him pretty nicely. He actually made his Eurobasket team, but was later cut because the Heat were like, yo, please don't go play and hurt yourself. I would expect something from this guy because the Heat can, develop these awesome players, and he's already got that skill. All that said, though, when you add all this up, it's definitely a downgrade in personnel from last year. Now, in terms of progression, Tyler Hero, he's a super popular guy, but since the bubble, he's sucked in the playoffs. Last season, he only hit 26% from 3. Like, come on, man, that sucks. Robinson, same thing. Since the bubble, he's not been the same. It's been hard to play him with Hero because together they're just huge defensive liabilities. Like, how much of that is skill, something you can develop, and how much of that is just their wingspan is small. Now, Victor Oladipo is also a wild card. This guy's been betting on himself, it seems like, for half a decade now. And you got to really respect that. He really believes in himself, and you saw some sparks last year where he can go off, man. Now, you also got to keep in mind here, injury is definitely a concern. Kyle was laboring in the playoffs. I mean, that might be overstated, though, because if you remember back to the Raptors championship, he also, couldn't feel his thumb the entire time. But I don't know if the difference is the type of injury. Also, you got to see the Heat, like I was mentioning at the very top here. You can't doubt Pat Riley's organization. Last year, they brought in Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, a couple random guys no one heard about, and had them playing solid minutes. So I wouldn't be surprised if Pat Riley finds some more guys to develop, just off the scrap heap. The number 5 spot, I've got the Brooklyn Nets. Now, this team's got a cap of number 1 in the East. They could be totally amazing, man. That trio of superstars, not quite superstars. Oh, but pretty close. Those 3 guys could all be superstars if they had a crazy good season. But then again, I've got them with the floor of number 8 because they could just be trash. They've got injuries, and the drama surrounding this team just makes them so dang volatile. My goodness. The Nets have had a ton of roster turnover this offseason, which is no surprise for any of these superstar-led super team sort of deals. They're always trying to compete this next season. What can we do now to get awesome? So they picked up TJ Warren, Ben Simmons, Markieff Morris. These guys all are super skeptical pickups for me. Like, we don't know exactly what we're going to get out of TJ or Markieff. They're coming off injuries. And Ben Simmons, too. He's got that weird back stuff going on. But, all these guys actually have awesome potential, too. Like, Markieff Morris is one of the better role player guys you want on a championships team. He played awesome with the Lakers back in the bubble. TJ Warren in the bubble looked like MJ. But Ben Simmons hasn't played since, like, 2 playoffs ago where he was embarrassed. So, all these guys, super high potential, but they could end up being nothings. Like when you look back at Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, they sort of did a similar thing. When they went on the team, people were like, this season is over. Like, what are we doing here? KD just ruined the league again. But it didn't really turn out to that much. So I don't expect all those guys to be super crazy good, but they're taking a lot of swings here, and maybe they hit on a couple of these and have some really solid players. They also picked up Royce O'Neal, who does not fit this trend. He's going to be super solid on D, hit 3-pointers. So that's nice. They did lose Drummond, but they have Claxton as the backup, so no big deal. They got rid of Griffin and Aldridge, their old swings, the old boys. And they lost Dragic, but you have Patty Mills, who does the same things, but maybe shoots it just a little bit better. That said, losing Bruce Brown, that's super going to hurt. He's going to play super well for the Nuggets over there. So in summary, they lost all the old boys. They'll miss Brown. And there's a lot of questions from those pickups they made. It's going to be super volatile. We don't know what they're going to get out of those. They were able to re-sign Mills, Claxton, and Edwards, so that's clutch. As for progression, you've got a few young guys here that'll get better. Sharp, Thomas, Edwards, Claxton. But like the story here with the Nets is volatility. It's just crazy. We talked about all those pickups being like maybe they're home runs, maybe they're kind of trash. We don't know. Is Markieff Morris even going to be able to be a functional basketball player again? Like, I really hope so. It sucks what happened to him, man. But also the superstars are super volatile. Like I mentioned, Ben Simmons, but KD and Kyrie too. I mean, you can say KD, like on the court, he's got the injury trouble. So that's where his volatility comes from. And Kyrie off the court, he just sort of goes off sometimes, So you don't know what to expect from these guys. There's a lot of drama potential, so the media's going to love these guys this season. But there's no denying the fit of these 3 stars is super elite. I've always liked Ben Simmons over Harden when it comes to fit here because Ben, he has plenty of room to drive to the basket. You've got elite scoring from KD and Kyrie. Like Harden there was nice, but there's a little bit of redundancy there. And you can't sleep on Ben's defense either. Like last time we saw him 2 seasons ago, he was runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. And you could actually make a case that he should have been Defensive Player of the Year. Now, everyone here is going to be motivated. It's going to be revenge seasons for all these guys, not only for the superstars, but for those pickups I mentioned that I'm a bit skeptical on. Like, I don't know if they're going to contribute. They're all going to be super motivated. Now, sadly, there is some unrest at the top there. KD, Sean Marks, Steve Nash just adds to the craziness of what could happen. So I've got them again at the best. They could be the best team in the East, no problem. But I don't see them missing the playoffs, but I could see them down there in the play-in tournament. At number 6, I've got the Toronto Raptors. This team is built for the regular season, man. They're so deep. If you watched my breakdown videos, you know this. They got 10 or 11 guys that are super solid. I think the potential last year, too, of Nick Nurse's big lineup scheme is going to show fruits this season as well. The Raptors added a ton of depth this offseason in the front court. You got Otto Porter Jr., Juancho Hernan-Gomez, and Thaddeus Young now for a full season at the power forward. And also Christian Koloko picked up at the center. Now, Christian Koloko with that 33 pick, I think he's been a bit overhyped by Raptors fans, but he does fit and fill a hole the Raptors really need. Just a big body down low for those matchups when we're against some team with, Joel Embiid. He can soak up 10 minutes fighting with them down there in the post. He's not going to win by any means, but at least allow someone to throw on him. Before this, our biggest center was pretty much Kem Birch, who's 6'9", so that isn't that great. Now, Otto Porter Jr., he adds nice depth. He's got that veteran presence, sharp shooting, and he's an underrated rebounder and defender too, so he fits really well on this team. Thaddeus Young, yes, the Raptors had him last season, but that was like after the trade deadline. So now I'll have him for the full year, and he's talked about in interviews how he's super excited. He feels more at home now in the system. And finally, Juancho Hernan-Gomez. He's a role player extraordinaire, solid forward for this Nick Nurse bigger lineup system. He's coming off a hot Eurobasket performance there, winning their version of the Finals MVP. The Raptors are also going to have a ton of progression. They've got a lot of young players getting better. And just the culture and the development system there in Toronto is insanely good. You got Gary Trent Jr., Precious Achiuwa, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby. Those guys are all young and going to take a jump this year. And you can't count out Siakam improving too. He's been working so hard at those Rico runs if you watch those on YouTube. So he's been grinding out there in pickup games while your favorite player has been on vacation. Now, a big factor for my prediction for the Raptors here is that Nick Nurse bigger lineup system. Will the rest of the league be able to adapt to this? Now, last season they showcased this quite a bit, but I don't think the league's going to care too much and prep too much for it. It might be the next evolution of how basketball is played, but all those other teams are worried about the 28 other teams. Now, in the playoffs, people can scheme and figure out the best way to defeat this lineup, but in the regular season, that's not going to be top of mind. Next up, number 7, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, you might think this is a little low. Maybe you put them above the Raptors. The reason I'm putting them below is because I know what to expect with the Raptors. The Cavs, they didn't even make the playoffs last year. And, you can say, oh, it was because of this, it was because of that, injuries, whatever. I do think the Cavs have a higher ceiling than the Raptors. I believe they could hit the number 2 spot, but they could be as low as number 10 too and not even make the playoffs if they get screwed over again with, Allen missing a lot of time. Maybe the fit in the backcourt isn't as good as we hope. This offseason, the Cavs picked up Robin Lopez and Donovan Mitchell. Now, Mitchell's going to be awesome for the offense, obviously, especially in late clock situations where they just can't get anything to work and he's got to ISO on somebody. He's one of the better players at doing that in the league. To get Donovan, though, they traded away Sexton and Markkanen. They didn't have Sexton last year anyways, so it's not that serious. And Markkanen, while he was nice in that sort of triangle forward defense there with Markkanen, Mobley, and Allen, they're not going to miss him too much. And they're able to re-sign Rubio and extended Garland. Now, I expect a lot of progression out of this team's players, too. You got some young guys here, Mobley, Garland, Allen, Okoro. Maybe he can start hitting a little bit more three-pointers. And Mitchell, too, I could see him improving as well. Now, they've got good continuity coming from last year. An injury really derailed their season. Now, that could happen again. I wouldn't be that surprised. Allen's had some trouble. And Donovan Mitchell, too. He missed 15 games last year, and he had an ankle injury in the playoffs the season before. Number 8, I've got the Bulls. Now, it's sad what's going on with Lonzo's knee here, not just for the team, but for him too. I really hope he gets better soon and we can see some more of that combo of him and Caruso just terrorizing other teams' backcourts. That said, I like this team's experience and firepower to sneak in there into the playoffs at the 8th spot. The Bulls were able to re-sign Zach LaVine and Derrick Jones Jr. in this offseason, and they picked up Drummond, replacing Thompson. That's a bit of a wash there. And also signed Dragic, who they hope can sort of patch up that backcourt while Lonzo Ball's out for this indefinite amount of time. All in all, that is a bit of a loss, though. Lonzo and Caruso, like I mentioned, was such a dynamic backcourt. It was awesome. As for progression on this team, Ayo Dosunmu, yes, he's going to get better. Patrick Williams, yes, he'll get better. Kobe White, I don't know. Bulls fans don't seem very high on this guy. And I can see Zach improving, too. Some other things to keep in mind is that while Zach's missed games weren't that high last season, he was playing through the back end of that year with an injury and into the playoffs too. And they'll have another year of chemistry now with DeRozan this year. And I think combining all those things, that offensive firepower with the experience this team has, that beats out other teams for the playoff spot, like the Hawks and like the Knicks. Here at number 9, I've got the Atlanta Hawks. Now, this is a pretty low rating for these guys. I see a lot of upside for them, too. They could be as high as 4. I don't see them falling out of the play-in tournament. They made some good moves this offseason to concentrate their talent. There's just a lot of questions around fit and proving it after the weak season the Hawks had last year, not even making the playoffs. The Hawks gained DeJounte Murray in a trade for Gallinari and some draft picks. They also picked up a couple holidays, literally 2 of them. Drafted AJ Griffin and signed Frank Kaminsky as well. There's also some progression to be looking for out of this Hawks team. Trae Young is still young. John Collins, as much as he's not jiving with the team that much, he's got a lot of room to improve, and maybe they end up moving him partway through the season to get another piece. Although I do kind of like his fit with Trae as the roll guy, pop guy. He's great in the air, athletic, throwing down alley-oops. They got some other great young players too, though. DeAndre Hunter, who's had trouble staying healthy, but a lot of potential. And Okongwu, who's really shown a lot in the last season. Maybe they can even move off Clint Capella if Okongwu continues to improve this season. Now, the big concerns here with the Hawks is, there's injuries. They just continue to plague DeAndre Hunter. And John Collins wants out. I'm not convinced that the issues that came up last year won't show themselves again this year and cause them to have a rough season. At number 10, I've got the New York Knicks with a cap on the upside of 6th place, making just out of the play-in tournament. And of all these teams here, I think they're the only ones that have a chance to actually fall out of the play-in tournament down to 11th. It'd be hard to see them go any further than that, though, because this team isn't trying to straight up tank. But, you know, there's a lot of drama that goes on in New York City, and that can really mess with the team. Like you saw Randall last year, he started off the season rough. The city turned on him, and he just sort of turned off. The body language was terrible. So the Knicks actually picked up a couple key pieces in the offseason. They didn't quite get Donovan Mitchell, but they've got Jalen Brunson now. Say what you will about the contract, but this is going to help them generate a little bit more offense, which was a big issue at certain times during the season for the Knicks. They also got Isaiah Hartenstein, who's an underrated pickup. I believe he was on the Clippers last year and played super well. They lost a couple players here, though. Burks, Noel, Gibson. None of these guys are going to be massive losses, but as role players, these guys were all pretty solid, particularly Burks and Noel. They were able to re-sign Mitchell Robinson in the backcourt there, so that's sweet. And expect some progression out of a lot of their young guys here. Robinson, he doesn't seem to get much better year to year statistically, but we'll see if he can make some kind of jump now. RJ Barrett's still young and developing. Grimes, Emmanuel Quickly, and there's a couple other young guys there too. The big questions, though, are really around Randall. What's he going to do? He's a real wild card here. He was just awful last season compared to the year before in his most improved player year, where he was totally amazing and got that awesome contract. Also, you know, how's that going to go with Knicks culture and the media, and how does that end up affecting the performance on the court? Lastly here, I want to do a special shout out to the Wizards that might find it kind of disrespectful that they're only a shout out here for the playoff race. But we don't really know what they're doing, man. They've got Porzingis, though, for a full season. Bradley Beal's back. Denny Avdija, is this guy going to progress at all? But the Wizards are just in a super weird place. Like, they're really acting and talking like they want to win games and do their best here, but that's just not what's happened the last 3-4 years. All right, thanks for watching. I hope this ages like a fine wine. Let me know in the comment section below which team you thought was the most disrespected, and I'll see you in the next video for the Western Conference breakdown. Peace.